I believe the first time I officially met Jeffrey was when he and I were on the same judging panel at a Florida contest. He was self-effacing and soft-spoken, and it was clear his goal was to try and find the best in the contestants who stood before him. I suspect that he does that in all of his life, to look for the good in what is handed to him. I've seen him speak and present over the years, and I've been struck by that again and again. Over this weekend, he's been nothing at all other than gracious, kind, calm, and accommodating. Jeffrey is Mr. Dallas Eagle 2009, Mr. Texas Leather 2009, as well as holding the title of Mr. Leather, International Mr. Leather 2009. I suspect that probably the thing he's prouder of, though, is that he is the founder of the Sharon St. Cyr Fund, which makes it possible for individuals and groups to have access to both ASL interpreters and hearing aid devices that wouldn't be possible without it. Another time when he took something, learning that at 40 he was losing his hearing, and turned it into something good, which he named after his mother, who died when he was very young. I have heard him, I think, twice or three times this weekend say that he believes that his mother has watched down on him and it would be proud of you, I'm sure, for all you have done. If you came out to our history panel yesterday, you also found out that the first time he went into a leather bar, he was wearing pressed khaki shorts and penny loafers, complete with penny. And by the next morning, he had lost one of the penny loafers, transformed by that experience. I'm going to tell you in the same way that I always think of Master Stephen's class as wolf leadership. The story I'm probably going to think of most often when I think of you now is this handsome, hot man wearing one penny loafer with a certain, I am imagining, dazed look on his face. I think that's a metaphor, too, for how many people come into our community. They come in all nicely starched and pressed, wearing their best penny loafers with a penny. And they stagger away the next day, dazed, glazed, and a little crazed, with only one shoe. That other one is about to step into a boot. I also can't help but think, from now on, whenever I see a stray, lone shoe by the side of the road, when you think, how the hell does somebody lose one shoe? Now I know. I'm really happy to be able to introduce you to my friend, Jeffrey Payne.
First of all, thank you very much. A couple of housekeeping items. One, ever since they opened the plane door when I landed here, my allergies have been for shit. So if I start into a coughing fit, just play along. It's part of the keynote, okay? Secondly, I have to thank Ms. Constance for your gracious invitation to be here and to be part of this very incredible weekend. But as well to your team and to the greater community, thank you. I have felt very welcome, and I truly appreciate it. I'm going to take you on a little journey, though, so just bear with me. We're going to go down this path, and I promise there's an end to it. Anyone that knows me knows that I have three loves in my life. The first one is my husband, Sergio. I have to say that. I have to go home.
It's on tape.
Oh, it's on tape? Okay, please play that for him. Second love of my life are my 10 bio pups that I have at home. I absolutely love them. They sleep in bed with us. All 10 of them. It's a California king. I get a corner and a lip on the side of the bed, and I hang on for dear life. The third love of my life is actually a TV show, The Golden Girls. So it's only fitting that I begin this journey with this. Picture it. New Orleans, August 2005. There's a hurricane a-coming. No, I'm not talking about the rawhide thing. That was yesterday. There's a hurricane a-coming, And I had decided at that moment, just like I had decided at every moment a hurricane was to come into New Orleans, I was going to ride it out. That's what we do. So before it came, I locked up the house. I stocked up on some really good red wine, bought some non-perishable food, got a good book, flashlight, extra batteries, and I bunkered down and rode it out. Hurricane Katrina came. Hurricane Katrina went. I did not have communication at that point because all radio stations, TV stations were down in New Orleans. In my neighborhood, everything was fine. The worst possible scenario, I thought, we'd be without electricity for about a week. At best, 2 days. So after the hurricane passed, I decided to walk the puppies. Since we'd been cooped up for about 36 hours, they needed to get out. I wanted to get out, see what was happening in the neighborhood, a very deserted neighborhood. We went for a walk, trees were down. Some of the houses in my neighborhood were without roofs. The 2-story house across the street from me was literally missing the entire back wall. It had been blown off and was sitting in their backyard. My neighbor, her entire roof had been ripped off and was literally laying in between our 2 properties. I was missing 2 shingles. I felt very, very blessed in that moment. So as I'm out walking the puppies, a young lady rides by on her bicycle. In her front basket, she has fresh flowers. In the back basket, she had about what I would guess 14 bottles of wine. My thought, smart-ass lady. She got something pretty to look at, and she's going to ride out this electrical outage drunk. I like her. My next thought was, well, she had to go buy that somewhere, so obviously someone's open. Let's go investigate. So I took the babies home, put them in their kennels on the first floor, and I walked the 32 blocks to the French Quarter. On the way, I will tell you that I saw a lot of damage. There were homes that would be salvaged. There were homes that would be demolished. Again, I felt blessed because my home had 2 shingles missing. So I made it to the French Quarter, and it was eerily quiet, except for this one fortune teller who had already come out and set up shop. I thought, way to go, girl. She hollers at me across the street. She says, come on over and I'll tell you all about your sex life. In all honesty, my first thought was, honey, if you could see what my sex life involves in that crystal ball, you're either going to be one of the wettest women in New Orleans right now, or you're going to be running faster than that hurricane that just passed through. But instead, I politely said, don't worry about my sex life, honey. Just tell me when I'm going to have air conditioning. Believe me, times like these, you learn what's important. And as a side note, she told me 3 days for electricity. She sucked at fortune telling. She just missed it. So I continued to walk down Royal Street on my way to Canal Street. As I got to Canal Street, I turned and I was actually looking in the direction of the Mississippi River, which was to my left, towards the casino. That's when I actually saw the looting for the first time. Police were everywhere. They were yelling at people to drop what they were walking out of the stores with, and people were dropping, some were not. On a personal note, I was actually standing by Brooks Brothers, which is at the corner of Royal and Canal. Their windows were all broken out. And anyone that knows me knows that I have the worst Worst case of a suit fetish that you have ever seen anyone have. I love a man in a suit, and if you put him in a suit and a bow tie, I'm on it. In Brooks Brothers, I know where my size clothes are, and I know where the bow ties are kept. But I resisted. But I can honestly say I did think about it. 2 seconds later, I turned around and looked to the right down Canal Street. If there was ever a moment that changes your life, it was that moment. Suddenly, I was feeling sad, I was panicked, I was fearful, and I was shocked, and all I could say, and literally said it out loud, what the living fuck is this? It was water. Water as far as the eyes could see. The sight of people in the water carrying whatever they could take out of their homes above their head, which wasn't much. Walking through the water to higher ground. There was water. There were my neighbors. And there was total destruction. My immediate thought were my babies at home, who were on the first floor in their kennel. I had to protect my babies, and I was 32 blocks from home. I ran 32 blocks. I did not jog, I did not skip. I ran. The whole time I was thinking, please God, don't let me be too late. The whole time I'm wondering if my house was underwater and if my babies were okay. I will tell you this, it was 32 of the longest blocks in my life. At the same time, I'm thinking, what the hell am I going to do? Anyone that knows me knows that I'm a planner. I like to plan. I make lists. There was no time to make a list. I just kept thinking, Jeffrey, you got to make a plan. What is the plan? Jesus Christ, I have no plan. Just get into the house, grab the babies, and get the fuck out of town. But please, Jesus, don't let me have been too late. I got home and I was relieved to see that there was not a drop of water in my neighborhood. My babies were okay. Panic attack deactivated. So I thought, okay, I can take a little bit of time and I can pack some bags. I'll get my important papers, insurance, wills, medical directives, passport, yada, yada, yada. I'll get it all together. We'll get in the car. And we'll leave. Okay, Jeffrey, you got this. So I'm on the second floor after I had finished packing. And the way my home was built, I actually had a balcony that went all the way around the second floor. We didn't have a single window in the house. They were all French doors. So I'm locking up the French doors on the second floor. And that's when I saw it. It was water. It was water coming through the drainage pipes, the sewer lines, the water gutters in the streets, and the water was coming fast. It was not flowing away. The water was coming to me. I panicked. I grabbed the metal box that had the insurance papers in it and all the other important information. I grabbed one bag that I had packed, which I thought contained some everyday type clothing. Turned out it was my gym bag that had dirty gym clothes in it. Though is a great scene, but not at this point. I only had 3 babies at the time. I grabbed all 3 of them in one big, here we go. They're weenie dogs, so they're kind of small. And I literally threw every single thing, the 3 of them, the metal box, and my gym bag, into the SUV. The SUV would not start because the gas had been siphoned out of it. Suddenly, you feel helpless. I've got a brand new SUV that is 7 weeks old. For what I paid for the bitch, it should have floated out of there. And instead, I can't even get the son of a bitch to crank. But someone somewhere was looking over me, because my neighbor was pulling out in his 2-seater sports car. They're so roomy. I jumped out of my SUV and I quickly told him what was going on. He said, "No problem, get in. Grab the dogs, get in." So I grabbed 3 miniature dachshunds. He had his piece of luggage, my piece of luggage, and my metal box. And we drove out of New Orleans. When we hit the interstate, the police were at the top and told us we could not go down the interstate. I don't know how many of you watched it on TV, but if you'll remember, they put the prisoners on the interstate because the jail had flooded. I pleaded with the officer and said, by the time we hit the prisoners, where they're located, not literally hit them, we will be going 70 miles an hour. And if they can hang on all the way to Baton Rouge, I think they've earned their freedom. He was not going to allow it. He said, "You have to go the other way." Well, there's only one other way that wasn't flooded, and that was to go south and then come back up through Houma. I don't know how many of you know the maps, but you go up through Houma, Lafayette, then we crossed over to Baton Rouge. 6 hours later, we were an hour away from New Orleans in Baton Rouge. But I got out. Fast forward 6 weeks. In those 6 weeks, I had not been able to get to my home. I did not know what had become of it. I just knew the last time I saw it, there was water coming up. But I had a very good friend who was with the press corps, and he gave me a press pass so I could get into New Orleans. So I drove down, but unfortunately in my neighborhood, the National Guard, Louisiana National Guard, was stationed outside of my neighborhood, and they had fenced it off with barbed wire. I could not go in, as no one was allowed to go in. But I'm not one to be deterred. I went up to one of the guards, and I will tell you with no shame, I will tell you today with absolutely no shame, I begged. He was cute. I would have even blown him if I needed to. I've blown worse. For nothing. But I begged him to allow me to go in and see my home. He called his superior over. They actually took my license from me. And I remember him saying, "You can go, but you can't bring anything out with you. And make it quick." It was a 9-block walk. The last time I had gone down this street, I'd actually run. This time I didn't run. I already knew that by the looks of the homes along the way, in those 9 blocks, I knew what I was going to be walking into when I reached my home. Yes, it is permanently etched in my mind, the big X's on the front of homes. It is permanently etched in my mind when we knew what the numbers meant within those X's. One was the National Guard number of the group that went in. One was the number of people that were found. One was the number of people that were found alive. And one was the number of people that were found dead. On every single home. I got to my home, a 2-story, once beautiful home, and saw that it had been shifted off of its slab by a little more than 2 feet. The water markings were at the 5-foot plus level. My home was destroyed. I wedged one of the doors open, and in that moment I had convinced myself, well, maybe the water didn't get in. It's amazing what your mind will do when it's in that moment. I will tell you today that none of you have seen a 37-year-old man weep like I'm about to, like I did in that moment. Everything in that home was lost. China was broken. Furniture was molded. It stunk to high heaven. I'm calling it mold. I'm really not sure what it was. All the pictures that were hanging on the wall, because sheetrock absorbs water and becomes nothing. All the pictures were laying on the floor. They were all shattered. I felt my world had been taken from me. It was at this moment I realized not only had I lost my job, not only had I lost my vehicle, but I had definitely just lost my home. And then along this staircase, there was one photo that had not fallen. Because when I hung this one particular picture, I had hammered the nail into a stud. And yeah, the photo was my mother. It is the only photo I have ever had of her. It was her senior graduation picture. She passed away from this earth when I was only 3 years old. And when she passed, my father, in his great wisdom, that was sarcasm, burned every single photo of her. My grandparents were the ones that gave me that picture that was hanging on that wall. That picture withstood that hurricane. Nothing was going to bring her down. Nothing. And I will tell you, I was still bawling my eyes out. I actually went over, carefully walked up the stairs, and I do mean carefully. And I took the picture down. I stepped back outside, and I sat on my front stoop. Y'all do know what a stoop is, right? Okay. As odd as this may sound to some, and I know it does sound odd to some people, I actually sat there and had a long talk with my mom. Over the last 49 years of my life, I've had many discussions with my mother. We decided in that moment that this too shall pass. It was going to take work, a tremendous amount of work. It was going to be scary. At times it would be adventurous. But that my path was not set in stone, and it was not predetermined. if I had the willpower, the drive, and the strength to keep moving forward, and also the ability to allow myself at times to feel defeated, insecure, and helpless, but then muster the energy to move beyond those feelings, then I would make it. As a side note, the guards allowed me to take the photo of my mother with me when I left. Believe me, there's no denying that I take after my mother. So they knew I wasn't stealing a damn thing. Put a wig on me. Wait, if your Facebook friend's with me. Yeah. Yeah, that's not much of a compliment to my mom, though. But I have made it. It was difficult. There were times that I was very lonely. There were times that I was very scared. There was times that it was adventurous. But it was my journey, like it or not. And to this day, my journey is still difficult, and at times it's still lonely and scary, and definitely it is adventurous, and I do love my life. So you ask why I shared this story with you. For we as a community, and if I may be so bold today, as a society, are now more than ever in the middle of yet another hurricane. He's in D.C. Only thing is, this hurricane isn't going to run its course in 36 hours. At minimum, it will be 4 years, and it could be much longer. But we have taken the time to weep this hurricane blowing into our lives. We have had the time to move beyond the feelings of shock and anger and panic. Now is the time we step forward. We have no other option. We must become engaged in our local, our state, our regional, and our national politics. We must continue to educate those who don't agree with us, and more importantly, to continue to educate ourselves. We must continue to celebrate each victory we have with humbleness and face each loss with a new and energized alternate plan. We have to elect individuals who represent us. We cannot sit idly by and watch our rights being taken from us. For if we do not make a united stand, we will definitely make a divided fall. But first, we in this room and across this nation can and must find common ground. We can and must, at minimum, agree to disagree. But what we cannot do is tear each other apart over our differences. They want nothing more than for us to tear each other apart, because then they don't have to. But we cannot play their game. Remember, we're the adults in this playground, not them. So let them pull each other's hair. Let them call each other names. Let them be the children that they are. We are not going back to the dark recesses of the shadows from which we came, unless it's for a good time. We will stand shoulder to shoulder, hand in hand, and we will show that we are a united front. We will help those who need a helping hand. We will elevate those who need elevating. We will cherish the history of those who have gone before us, because we will not let their work die in vain. We will be respectful even when disrespect is thrown at us. We will take the high road and allow them to wallow in the ditches of life. We will learn more than they know. We will be more active than they are. We will allow ourselves to be who we are, and we will love each other for being exactly who we are. And I do get it. I'm a white male. I will never know what it is to be transgender. I will never know what it is to be a person of color. I will never know, no matter how many times I dress up as Mama Payne, what it is to be a woman. But there is a difference between knowing something and understanding something. Picture it. Dallas, Texas, last Thursday. 3 guys, and this is a true story, by the way, 3 guys walked into the Dallas Eagle, decked out more leather than they have in stock at Mr. S. Leather. Across the bar, they spot a guy in jeans, sneakers, and a polo shirt who happens to know how to read lips. They proceeded to say things like, "God, I hate it that people come to the Eagle dressed in preppy clothes. I bet he is true S&M, standing model. This is the Eagle. Why won't he dress right? This sucks. Vanilla is taking over this bar." The bartender actually walked up to him and said, what could he pour for him? They gave him their drink order, and one of the guys looked at the bartender and said, "Who's the guy at the end of the bar, and why is he here?" The bartender looked down to make sure he knew who they were talking about. He saw the man they were speaking of. He cocked a smile and he said, "Him? That's Jeffrey Payne. He's a former international Mr. Leather. And by the way, he owns the damn bar." I can honestly say I think my bartender got a boner in that moment. For even he knows how I feel about clothes. We're born into this world naked, and we're going to leave this world naked. And in between those two events, at the end of the day, it's all costume. For you see, if we use their train of thought, the day I lost every piece of leather in the hurricane, I was no longer a Leatherman. If you use their train of thought, I wasn't an advocate for anything except vanilla sex, only to be done in the missionary position. And with their train of thought, each of you here today is hearing a keynote address from a non-kinky, non-leather adversary, all based on how someone is dressed. I think not, because my clothes do not tell my story. Just as your clothes or your leather does not tell yours. And honestly, I'll argue the trueness of my leather heart and your leather heart to anyone, anytime, anywhere, and to my death. So I may never know what it is to be a minority. But that doesn't mean I do not have the mental capacity to understand it. Teach me to understand what I do not know. Do not discount me due to the color of my skin. Do not group me into the white male privileged assholes who are descending down upon us. Don't judge me or anyone else based on an outfit, their creed, the color of their skin, their gender, their sex, for we could be possibly alienating a great advocate. So we will educate each other to a greater understanding. And in doing so, when we stand shoulder to shoulder, then we truly understand who we are standing beside. We can then truly call ourselves brothers and sisters. Through acceptance, education, and open minds, we will successfully move through this hurricane we are suddenly in. Bless you. I've been through a hurricane. Each of us has gone through our own version of a hurricane in our lifetime. But each time we go through one, it has made us stronger. It has made us wiser. It's made us tougher. In this current hurricane, and with this current hurricane, I've got but one comment left for you today. Their pathetic hurricane is nothing but a Cat 1. The one we're bringing to them is a Cat 5, so bring it on. Thank you.